Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Duncan McCullum on a Saturday afternoon, and what an incredible day it is here. It's just beautiful in Santa Cruz. Sunny weather, a bit chilly, but the skies are making it look like spring. And I'm very happy to be here. This is, can you believe January's almost, well, it's half over. And this is kind of a real pivotal time because this is the time of year that a lot of people have kind of already given up on their New Year's resolutions. We know that it's been said by about the halfway through January, people have given up on a resolution. So, I want to talk about our health today, really. And health is not really a resolution. It's a way of life. It's creating a new way of life. And I'm involved with a bunch of doctors, from acupuncturists, medical doctors, dentists, orthodontists, all kinds of different people that are working to help people get their longevity in place. And we do this by several factors that I'm going to go over today. But one of the main things to think about is what happens starting in about our 40s and then on up through the years is we start to get we get afflicted with something called age-related diseases. Age-related diseases. What the heck is that? Well, what it means is your body's more susceptible to different types of ailments, disease, your immune system's weaker, your organs, your endocrine system may not be working as well. But the crazy thing is, the DNA is still the DNA. We're born with the same DNA that we die with. But what happens over time is the way that those genes are expressed are altered by something. And it's been coined age-related disease. So let's really break that apart and take a look at what this means. What it means is that the genes that express themselves based on environmental content are going to create something in your life that's either good or bad. And age-related disease is obviously the bad ones. That's when these various arthritis turn on, heart disease, arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and all those things don't typically happen when you're young. If you cut the skin of a 5-year-old, a 40-year-old, or an 80-year-old, one of them's going to heal quicker. And obviously it's going to be the young person. Well, why is that? What happens? Why does our body slow down? Well, science has really come a long way. We really understand a lot about this today. We understand about these changes that occur at a cellular level, because life only begins and ends in the cell. Our body is a group of cells, 75 trillion of them, that have grouped together to become different units, like an organ, a liver, a kidney, a lung, an eye, a finger. And those groups are like cells that have decided to work together to create a human body or in life, any living organism. Now, we're not talking about the spiritual being or the knowing how to know part of this, whatever you might think there. But what we know is there's some supreme part running this body. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm not a bunch of Duncan, is not, in my opinion, an accumulation of a bunch of little cells that come together. That's the body. But the being is something else. That's the knowing how to know guy, the awareness of being aware person. So, but let's really look at how that being aware thing is affected by this body that we're using this lifetime. And, it starts out, if we're lucky, we're not going to be exposed to too many toxins and things, and we're going to have a great childhood, a healthy childhood. Our immune system's going to be strong. We're going to be able to battle off a lot of the things that come toward us. Or actually, you know what? Let's change that around and go, we're going to be able to see what comes to us and enjoy it and pass by. Some of the different martial arts are not combative, but they actually take the power that comes into you and use that power to have it go by. And what you resist, you pull in. So when you kind of resist all these diseases and you're really worried about them, what do? You end up with those, So it's really important to realize that this body of ours has an amazing innate intelligence that can actually help it stay well. And that is what the turning back of the biological clock is all about, is being able to get this body and this working 75 trillion cells that are all working as a group organization to actually function well and for a long time. I mean, heck, who wants to live for a long time if you're going to be sick? I just did a workshop at Severino's last Wednesday night, and one of the things I went over, a study from Michigan that says that 81% of Americans, or 81 million Americans, have at least 3 chronic diseases. And that's pretty bad. So a chronic disease is defined as something that lasts for three months or more. So let's just kind of take a look at the cell and this thing called the gene, which is an expression of our DNA, and how our environment can make it live well or make it sick. This is the key. So Dr. Dan Pompa was in town last week. Dr. Mindy Pell's a good friend of mine, had him speak over the hill in Las Gatos or San Jose, and quite a few of my patients were able to go see him. And Dr. Pompa is really an innovator in the world of cellular health. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about, or the practices I do in my office, have to do with him. We are going to be starting our cellular healing lifestyle program this coming week, Wednesday night at my office, McCollum Family Chiropractic in Capitola, right by Bed Bath & Beyond. If you're interested in joining this 7-week program that's going to teach you how to actually turn back your biological clock. And it's a pretty amazing program. It goes over the ketogenic diet done correctly. Now, a lot of people, almost anybody that you mention ketogenic diet, they go, oh yeah, I've dabbled in that, or I have some friends that dabbled and it didn't work, or my doctor says don't do it, I'm not a candidate for it because of yada yada yada. So, you know, this is a very important point, is if you had a Mercedes-Benz or a Rolls-Royce or a really nice Porsche, you probably wouldn't just start to tinker with it yourself and try to figure out how to tune it up. I don't think. You know, you'd want somebody that had a lot of experience and understanding on the functions of those different parts and how that thing works. So diets are something that you can dabble in. You can try the ketogenic diet, the paleo diet, the carnivore diet, the vegan diet, and all these things. And you will have some success with them. But as with any diet, you need to be able to switch off back and forth, or your body gets so used to it that it no longer works. And so when we're talking about the science behind the ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting together, you're not going to hear or learn this on the internet. You're not going to learn this anywhere else other than somebody that's trained in these philosophies. Now, my online course that we just started, you can go to mccollumwellness.com and sign up for the 7-week course online. It's a fantastic course based on Dr. Dan Pompa's book, Beyond Fasting. And you can actually enroll. You would be able to tune in to my Wednesday night classes on a Facebook private page and watch all of that class, even if you don't live in town. But you would have the whole course right there on your computer, no matter where you are on the planet. Also, we have a Zoom meeting every Thursday at lunchtime, Pacific Standard Time, where you can get in, ask your questions, debug what's going on, find out if there's something else you need to do, and you have a whole group of people doing this together, which is fantastic. One thing that Dr. Mindy mentioned the other day, which I thought was great, is, you know, why do we have groups for everything? Those of us that are religious, they have a religious group, you know, you have a sports group, you have, you know, families and all these groups, but when it comes to health, we think it's a private thing we do by ourselves. Well, we need to change that, because, you know, when we work with a group of people, and we have a large organization across the country and even out of this country that are working to help change the health of the people on the planet. And I work with Health Centers of the Future doctors, and these guys are phenomenal. In fact, anytime I go talk to a patient, on whether it's a phone interview or in my office, I have 40 doctors standing behind me, from experts in every field, from, like I said, medical doctors, dentists, acupuncturists, chiropractors, scientists. It's just amazing. So what opened the door for me is when I actually realized that I have a whole team that are at my disposal anytime I need help with a patient. My whole world opened up. I felt much more confident in being able to address these things that happen to people's genes. Again, we're talking about the biological clock. So, but what's really interesting, it comes down to basically one concept for aging and sickness and mortality. One concept, unless you get hit by a truck or something like that, is chronic disease simply is caused by chronic infections, chronic inflammation. Chronic disease is caused by chronic inflammation. That's it. You put inflammation into a body long enough, it's going to heat the body up, and bad things are going to start to become of it. Now, we can constantly, from this point forward, try to stamp out that inflammation, like at the boardwalk with one of those mole things. Every time the mole sticks up, you hit it with a hammer. But you'll be chasing symptoms around forever until they overcome you. Where if we were to step back one step further and go, well, if chronic disease is caused by chronic inflammation, why don't we figure out what's causing chronic inflammation? And here's a real simple example. If I cut myself on my hand and I say, I clean it up and let it just do its thing, it's probably going to heal. But if I put all kinds of dirt in it and I expose it to all kinds of chemicals and I expose it to molds and stuff, that thing's never going to heal. It's going to become infected and festered, and pretty soon it's going to cause blood poisoning, and it could kill me. So what do? You have a cut, you have an injury, you have something that's not working right. Keep it clean and let the body do what it's supposed to do. And that there is the answer to longevity right there. What is it? How does this translate into what we need to do? Well, we need to clean up our environment. That environment would be what's under your sink. Get rid of the Raid and the Glade, those little Glade things that you plug into the wall that spew chemicals out that get into your olfactory nerve, up into your primitive brain, and start to turn off brain signals. And not only that, those toxins are harmful. They open up the blood-brain barrier, and then you can get all kinds of bad stuff in there. So we want to clean up our environment. Under your sink, what are you putting under your arms? Does it have aluminum in it? What else does it have? Does it have other chemicals in there? What are you spraying on your body? What kind of soaps are you using? Are you using those things that come from different countries that sound fun, that are smelly, but they're full of chemicals? How about your shampoo? How about your shaving cream? What kind of stuff are you putting on your body? One of the biggest toxic areas in our life for women is that one cosmetic row that goes on and on and on down in one of those, one of the stores that women shop at. And those cosmetics are incredibly poisonous and toxic. The thing is that the FDA does not require companies to put what products are in their, what chemicals are in their products on their labels. They don't have to test them. Why? Because you're not consuming it. You're not putting it in your body. You're putting it on your body. Wow. I think that skin is the biggest organ we have. Okay, now we know we can put these little sticks on our skin that will get insulin into our body. We have all these other things that the medical sciences are putting on our skin to get into our body, yet we can put toxic chemicals and makeup on our body, and we don't even know where that stuff comes from. Some of it comes from China and other places. It has lead in it and has barium in it, and who knows what other heavy metals that are in it, because there's not a really clear way to test that stuff. So, we want to be very aware of this. Now, one of the big things that came up at this talk the other day, too, is not just what's happening to the human body. These chemicals that we're getting exposed to are affecting our cells, our organs, our brain. But there's something even more important that's been coming out in the last 5 or 10 years in science, and that's the bugs we live with, our microbiome, the organisms that cover every part of our body. Nothing gets into our body unless it goes through a microorganism. So, as my friend Dr. Shane Morris said the other day, if you think you're alone, you feel alone, you're not. You're covered with quadrillions of microorganisms. They're everywhere. These guys are our friend. Can you imagine back in I think it was in the 1500s when Dr. Janssen, the two brothers made the first telescope or microscope, and they looked in that microscope, and what did they see? Something wiggling in water, and they went, ah! That's moving, it's alive, kill it! We've been trying to kill the microorganisms ever since. Look at what glyphosate's doing. Look at what these other herbicides and pesticides are doing. We're trying to kill the very thing that keeps us alive, the very thing that allows us to neutralize or get nutrition into our body. Those microorganisms are so vital in our soil, so vital in to connect the nutrients in the soil need those microorganisms for the roots to be able to absorb them, to get up into the plants, so those plants can do the fruiting that they do so that we can consume the plants. But we're trying to kill them. Thank God we never will. We'll never win that battle, but it's going to, we're going to do a lot of damage before that occurs. So, when we talk about cleaning up the environment, I talked about what we got to get out of the house. We got to make sure that even if you're wearing polyester clothes, that's made with estrogen. If you have to take supplements of any kind or vitamins of any kind, realize your body's not working efficiently. You have to talk to your doctor about, your medical doctor, is there something that I might be able to do to get my body healthy again? Dr. Jason Fung is actually one of the kings to this. And Josh, I think we'll go ahead and play Dr. Jason Fung's commercial. I did an interview with Dr. Fung. He's the guy who wrote the book, The Complete Guide to Fasting, and also the book, The Obesity Code. And he's a nephrologist that decided to quit treating diabetes conventionally. He found that all he was doing was giving the patient medication to control the blood sugar level. And all it was doing was making people fatter and fatter and fatter. It wasn't making them healthier. It was actually just keeping the blood sugar level the same. But if you keep dumping the same amount of sugar into the body and then you try to push it out, and then you get more medications to help push out that sugar out of the blood so it doesn't kill you, you could do that forever. But then what happens? Why don't you just stop giving it the sugar? That's the key. That's what Dr. Jason Fung came up with, along with Dr. Pompa, who I'll play in a minute. But Dr. Jason Fung discovered, hey, let's start using the other fuel, the clean burning fuel, not the toxic burning glucose sugar that's insulin dependent, that's giving people Alzheimer's disease at the end. He started to make them use the glucose. And we're teaching that in our class, by the way, Wednesday night, McCollum Family Chiropractic. Come join, or come online and join at McCollumWellness.com. You can sign up there for the 7-week course. So we got Jason up and ready to go. Here we go. Jason Fung is an amazing doctor, nephrologist, who's really breaking amazing ground with diabetes. And he has been embracing the nation with fasting and how we can actually, through fasting, reverse type 2 diabetes. So we're really glad to have you here, and I thought maybe you could just mention a few things about it.
Yeah, it's not very hard to understand, because if you don't eat, then your body is going to need to use up that glucose, because it's an energy source. So if you don't eat, your blood sugars will fall. Everybody knows that. So then why can't we use that as a therapeutic option? Because now you've got a sort of treatment that's 100% natural, completely free, and wouldn't that be better to do than to go see your doctor and take expensive medications that have potential side effects? And that's the real thing, is that this represents a new option for people that a lot of people haven't thought about before. And it's like, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, you really haven't lost anything. Like, you don't eat for a few hours. That's the only thing. You're hungry for a little bit. But you haven't lost anything. But if it works for you, it really can change your life, because that type 2 diabetes can cause so many diseases, right? It can cause heart disease and kidney disease and blindness and stroke.
Yeah, number one cause of kidney failure too, right?
Exactly, and it's no fun. And at that point, if you develop all those diseases, there's nothing you can do about it. And one of the things that people always think is that, well, I can go get some insulin from my doctor.
Right.
And the problem with that is that, yes, you can get insulin from your doctor. It won't make you healthier. That's the point. that if you have type 2 diabetes and you take all these medications, you don't actually prevent any heart disease or strokes or anything like that. The insulin doesn't make it better because it doesn't get rid of the sugar.
Yeah, and you were mentioning too that insulin, I mean, most people have a problem with too much insulin anyway. Yeah. So when you said, why the heck would you give somebody more insulin if their problem is too much insulin in the first place?
Exactly. And the insulin, as everybody who takes it knows, causes weight gain. You take insulin, you gain weight. Well, how is that going to make your diabetes? Well, it's going to make it worse. So you're taking a drug that, yes, your sugars will get better, but your underlying disease is going to get worse.
Right.
And it's like year after year, you're just giving yourself more medications. And guess what? That's exactly what we saw. So, you know, in the standard treatment, and the scary part, of course, is that you could go to 99% of doctors, even at like the fanciest medical schools, and they'll treat you exactly the same. So they'll give you first a drug and another drug, then insulin, more insulin, more insulin. Right. And they think that they're doing great, but you know, at the end of the day, they've got their heart disease, they've got their strokes, they've got their kidney disease. They haven't actually done anything.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming here. You've helped so many people.
Thank you so much.
It's really great. Thanks. So that was Dr. Jason Fung, and just an amazing guy. Oh, here are my headphones. Oh, now I can hear me. Yeah, and you know, he's really to his point. You know, if you're going to just keep dumping insulin into the body, you're not solving any problems. You're maybe maintaining the blood sugar, but you're getting the blood to be thicker and thicker and thicker. It's almost like orange juice with pulp in it. It gets thicker and thicker. That can't get through those little teeny blood vessels at the tip of your toes, and then it starts to plug them up, and then you don't have oxygen, and then the body gets sick, and then you start to get actually gangrene, and that's where these diabetics start to lose their limbs. Let alone the kidneys start to not work right because that thickness plugs up the kidneys. So we really need to start looking at what kind of food we eat. And the first week of our ketogenic diet intermittent fasting workshop we do that we've coined the cellular healing diet, the first week we're going to start to talk to you about the right foods to eat, what not to eat, and simply eliminate the inflammatory foods, right? Remember, chronic inflammation causes chronic disease. So we know that foods alone can make us incredibly sick. In fact, I had one of the guys, Dean, talked at our talk at the workshop the other day. Just by changing what he put in his mouth, he got off 40 ibuprofen a week. 40. That's a lethal dose, by the way, especially if you do it as many weeks in a row as he did it. Now he's like 30 pounds, 40 pounds lighter. He looks like he's 15 years younger. He's energetic. He loves life. He's come back to do the class again because he wants to make sure that he can live the life that he wants to live by being healthy. Turn back the biological clock, which is really possible to do if you do everything that we know in the science now. So the ketogenic diet, we're talking about the intermittent fasting ketogenic diet, why diets don't work, because you stay on the same diet too long and you don't move in and out of that, that phase so that your body just gets so used to it, it gets lazy. Lazy bodies don't do well. So we talked about the environmental toxins. We talked about what we're putting in our body. Now what's really interesting is some of the studies show that when, like we say, don't eat meat with hormones in it, don't eat meat with pesticides in it, don't eat, you know, because they use human growth hormone and then they spray the grains with pesticides and the animals eat the grains, so they spray, the animals get sick, so they give them injections of antibiotics so that they, since they live in real tight quarters, they're spreading disease. That stuff gets in the food that we eat. Some of the things that they are now discovering, very new to the public to hear about, in fact this might be the first time you've ever heard it, is it's not necessarily what's happening to the human cell, but it's what all those toxins are doing to the microbiome organisms that are covering the planet and covering our body. It's wiping out, it's causing extinction to whole classes of these microorganisms that we need to live and to function. There's one microorganism that has to do with colostrum. Colostrum is the first mother's milk that the baby gets when they're born. The first milk that's emitted from the mother has this thing called colostrum in it, which is a amazing immune booster for the kid. But because of some of the toxins that we're getting, some of the organisms that help promote that are being wiped out. And this is not a good thing. You know, a lot of babies, one out of, I think 20% or 25% of all children born in the United States are C-section. Well, that might seem, oh, who cares, it's a C-section, what have you. But the thing is, very key thing about a vaginal birth is as the baby's coming down through the birth canal, that baby's being exposed to all of the microbiome that the mother is carrying with her, which the body has been trained to use and is built up its old immune system to this microbiome that comes down in mom. Versus you cut the mom open and you pull the baby out, and the first microbiome it's exposed to is in the hospital. And we know there's bad stuff in the hospital. So let's look at the difference here. So that hospital microbiome that's floating around in the air there is been around for a while in the hospital. How long has that microbiome been in mom? Maybe about as long as man's been on the planet. This is pretty amazing. You know that the microbiome that we carry in our digestive system, the microbiome passed down for our mother, goes all the way back to Egypt and even to Africa, because that microbiome has been passed on mother to child, mother to child, mother to child for all those generations. We do 23andMe and find out where our human genes came from. Well, guess what? You got microbiome that have been traveling with the family line for that long too. Those things are so important to us, and it's so important we learn to take care of them, that when we are trying to keep ourselves healthy and all we do is kill those microbiome with antibiotics, we're not just killing the bug of today, the N125876 virus, whatever the heck it is. We're wiping out generations, multiple generations of microbiome that have been working in a symbiotic relationship with us, with our breed, since time immemorial. So we really want to stop looking at jumping to antibiotics now. The medical doctors are starting to do this, but a lot of times the damage is done. When we look at age-related diseases now, by the time we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond, the microbiome in our body has been wiped out by antibiotics. The average 17-year-old's been on antibiotics 17 times by the time they're 17, wiping out those generations of multi-generations of million-year-old microbiome that have been traveling up through the mother, passed along by mother to mother to mother through us. So we got a lot of work to do. If you really want to live to be healthy, you want to be healthy today, that's awesome. But what if you wanted the next 20, 30, 40 years to be, if you want to beat that bell curve, if you want to not be one of the ones that has chronic inflammation, heart disease, lung disease, colon cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate, all these things, and then even some of the things like the dementias, the Alzheimer's diseases, the Parkinson's disease, all the neurological disorders, you realize those are age-related diseases, right? So, but the thing is, it's only age-related because we've let our body get weak. Those cells have gotten weaker and weaker and weaker. In fact, one thing that's really amazing, there's something called telomeres, and you may have heard of this and may not, but it's very simple. Telomeres have to do with your DNA and how long your cells can divide. Once your cells have divided since the day you were conceived, you were one cell. And then that stem cell divided and split up to become every one of the 75 trillion cells in your body. Huge groups of cells decided to be a liver, a kidney, a lung, a brain, an eyeball, a foot. So what we really need to understand is what's happening every time those cells divide, the DNA gets more susceptible to damage. Every time a cell divides, your DNA becomes more susceptible to damage. So what does this mean? You have these little strings on the end of your DNA called telomeres. You could call them tel the years if you wanted to, because when they're gone, you're dead. You're done. I don't know if you've ever been to a pond and you get those horse tails they're ancient. You just break them off one section at a time. That's like a telomere. Every time your cell divides, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Once your telomeres are a certain length, that cell can no longer divide anymore, and it's supposed to commit suicide. It's called a senescent or a senile cell. And at that point, its function is pretty much done, and it's supposed to give up the ghost, emit a self-destruction toxin, and then self-destruct. The body would reabsorb all those nutrients, the vitamins, minerals, the cell walls, and all that stuff, and send it to the cell factory, and it would be recycled into new cells. Here is where the problem lies, and this is where the chronic inflammation comes in. This is where the age-related diseases come in. This is where chronic disease comes in. These cells aren't dying. They're sitting around causing trouble. In fact, I'd say they're kind of like a bored teenager. They have nothing to do, so they go out and cause trouble. What do? They mutate. You know, we have 10 million cancer cells made in our body every day, and as long as we wipe out 10 million cancer cells, we're okay, right? But these cells mutate, they get inflamed, and then they inflame the cells next to them, and then the whole organism becomes inflamed. The cell walls are inflamed. When the cell walls are inflamed, hormones can't get in the cells. This is the whole problem with insulin resistance. The reason that we need more insulin is because our cell walls are so inflamed and crudted up with bad oils like the trans fatty acids we've heard about, that the little thing that would act on the cell, like insulin is supposed to open up the cell wall door so sugar can get in the cell. But those cell walls are so crusty that one insulin can't do it anymore. So pretty soon you need to get all the insulin that your body can possibly muster up to try to pry open that crusty cell so one little glucose can get in there. When we don't have enough insulin to pry open that crusty cell anymore, the medical doctors give us more insulin. Now, great, so we can pry open that crusty cell to get the insulin in there so we can get some energy, but what's happening? We have too much insulin in our body. Dr. Jason Fung talked about it. Too much insulin in the body has a real fancy name, hyperinsulinemia. Hyper means too much, insulin means insulin, anemia means blood. Guess what too much insulin in your blood causes? It's called diabetes type 3. It's called Alzheimer's disease. So as our body's inflamed, our gut gets inflamed, and that's one of the big things that we need to understand is we've got to clean up our own body. So we've got to get the environment of our body clean. So we started talking about the environment, like in your house, what you've got under the counters, what kind of perfumes you use, what what kind of neighborhood you live in, all those kind of things, right? What kind of office you work in, what's the air vents like? Are you being constantly bombarded by bad things? Probably. That was number one. Then we started talking about what we're putting in our body. So we're talking about the foods we eat and various substances that we consume. Now the next one, and really the one that is missed by so many people, is what damage has already been done to our body. You know, a lot of times nutritionists, and thank them for their work, they say clean up your diet and you can get well. Well, that's great, except for you've got to get the damage out. There's three major issues that Dr. Dan Pompa talks about. These are the deadly three. When they get together, they can actually trigger a mechanism that's going to turn you over the edge from making you healthy to sick. And it's a trauma that occurs. And it has to do usually with some kind of mental stress or some kind of stress on the body, but it has to do with heavy metals, molds, and hidden infections. That's the deadly three. So when we talk about cleaning up the outside environment, cleaning up what we're putting in our body, the third one, and the one that is missed by most, and the most important thing that you'll hear today, is how do I handle those deadly three things in my body? The heavy metals, the molds, and the hidden infections. First of all, how do you know you have them? Listen, Dr. Michael Skinner is an epidemiologist. He says that we get heavy metal and from like mercury and lead at least 4 generations down through mother's umbilical blood. And we also get 278 other toxins and chemicals, from cancer-causing chemicals to all of these various things through mother's blood. It's passed down through mother. So we don't really get into this life with a clean, perfect bill of health to begin with. Now the human spirit and the innate body, the innate being, the thing that drives our body, is pretty resilient. It's pretty hard to kill us. You know, you ever tried to kill a weed? You know, you spray it, you pull it out, and you use this new really cool thing that you can do, which has to do with vinegar and Epsom salts and some kind of natural soap that will cause that to stick to the leaves, and that can kill it, and it's natural, and you don't have to use glyphosate. But the point is, they don't die very well. Life really has one goal, and that's to live. So unfortunately, in some ways for us humans, is the life force will continue on even though the body's given up the ghost. The body's sick beyond repair in some cases, especially when we get the dementia in the brain, we get organs failing, we get cancer overwhelming our body. You know, that's not the way to go. We know that the power that made the body can heal the body. We just have to do what Dr. Reggie Gold, one of the greatest chiropractors that ever lived, always said. He said, the body needs no help, it just needs no interference. So we got to get the interference out. Heavy metals, mercury, okay? We know mercury's been around in amalgam fillings, in silver fillings, for over 150 years. And you know, you think you have a silver filling, well, half of it's mercury. That mercury off-gases and gets into your brain, it gets into your different organs. There are certain organs it likes to be in, especially the pituitary and the hypothalamus, which live outside the blood-brain barrier. The number one cause of lead poisoning is MOM. Why? Because lead is stored in the bones. Lead stores in our bones, and we've had so many generations of too much lead in our existence that mother, as she is creating this new beautiful baby and all of the nutrients are being taken out of the storage spots from mother, the lead comes out of the bones with the calcium, and that lead goes across the placenta barrier into the baby. So we've already got a huge exposure to lead 4 generations down, mercury minimum 4 generations down. So we know that we come into this life in pretty bad shape. Then, if we were of the age where we are being vaccinated, there's definitely mercury, aluminum, formaldehyde, all those other things put in those vaccines. This isn't a discussion about them, it's just the fact that there are toxins in those that are getting into a body. If that body has already reached its limit, they will push it over the edge. So if you think about it, if you had a cup of water, if you had 2 16-ounce glasses of water, one was full and one was half full, and you say that's my load, my availability to hold toxins before it actually spills over and makes me sick. So if we all come into this life with different size glasses, somebody might have a 16-ounce glass, somebody might have a quart, somebody might have a shot glass. That is the limit or the threshold to where your toxins overwhelm your body. Somebody like George Burns, if anybody remembered him, he lived to be 105. He's a comedian, actor, singer, entertainer. Always had a cigar in his mouth, and he was always drinking whatever he drank. He lived to be that old. He had a really strong DNA, and his cup was very full, big. He had a very big cup that could absorb too many things. His body just wore out before he died of something bad. That would be the way to go. That is really the whole point to this talk today. Let's get our bodies healthy enough that they just wear out at one point. There's let's see if I can remember the gentleman's name. He wrote a book. It's called The One-Horse Carriage, and he wanted to invent a one-horse carriage that lasted for 100 years. On that 100th year, the thing would fall apart completely, but you never had to maintain it. Nothing ever wore out. The bearings, the horses, the bridles, the leather were perfect. And, you know, or you get a lemon, and then you have to keep fixing it all the time. So when you look at our bodies, you know, we want our bodies to last our lifetime. We want our bodies to stay healthy during a lifetime. And we now know that we can make this happen if you take the correct steps. So I was talking about one of the deadly 3, heavy metals. You've got to get them out. You've got to find out if you have them, okay? We know you have them. Are they affecting you to the point to give you autoimmune diseases, to be affecting your ability to digest, affecting your gut, giving us leaky gut syndrome? Are they affecting your body's ability to balance its own hormones? Is it affecting your blood sugar? Is your energy being affected by it? Is your mitochondria being affected by it? Because those toxins stop the body from being able to produce energy well, okay? Heavy metals. The second one are molds. Now, if you live anywhere on the planet, there are molds. There's good molds and bad molds. Unfortunately, when you get mold in your body, it's very, very, very invasive. I don't know if you've ever seen mold growing on something. Like, it will be, you see it on top, but it has spores that go very deep into that. Like, you know, Grandma used to take the jelly out and scrape off the little mold, but she didn't realize that there were spores that are tentacles or whatever going deep into that stuff. So metals are metals. They're hard to get out, but we can help you get them out. But the mold, I mean, they're just like a particle, right? But mold it's live. It's a live organism growing inside of us. So they're harder to get out, but we have to get them out. And then the third one is hidden infections. Now this can show up often in the jaw. It's where we might have had a root canal or a wisdom tooth pulled out. The tooth has 7 miles of capillary, or little tunnels in it, tubules that are filled up with your life until the tooth dies, and it becomes a cadaverous organism in there, a piece of dead tooth. And if those 7 miles of little tubules can be filled up with all kinds of bad things, and then they live in there, and we can't get to them because we have no blood supply to them anymore. But they emit their feces, or whatever comes out of their functioning of life, leaks into our lymph system, and then that can cause chronic disease. You know, there's even a correlation with breast cancer on the same side as you would have one of these hidden infections, and all kinds of different problems. One of a very good friend of mine, in fact, I saw that she might have been on here a minute ago, I'm not sure if she still is, but she, being in the health profession, was having a chronic lymph gland swollen right below her skull on the right-hand side. And it was always swollen. She always had neck pain. She would go get adjusted. It never went away. She finally went and found out that she had one of these hidden infections, and she had to have it surgically removed. And it was not until that time that she actually started to feel better and started to heal. And just this week, a patient that I started working with about 8 months ago came in, and we put her through the ketogenic diet, the intermittent fasting, diet variation, cellular healing, and all these different things. She had a problem with one of her major organs, and she had to have surgery on that. We were having difficulty finding out where the problem was, but there had to be one of these hidden things. We did mold tests on her. We did heavy metal tests on her. Sure, she had a little bit of each, but it wasn't until we actually got her to the right doctor that we found out that she had one of these hidden infections in her jaws. And she came in, she looked years younger, and she said they found it and that there were actually eggs in there. I mean, this is incredibly gross, but you know what? This is what's making us sick. So those are the 3 things: heavy metals, molds, and hidden infections. Now, the hidden infection can be somewhere else. You could have a bone infection, or you can have infection in your large intestine that just never goes away. A lot of time women have a very tiny infection in the lining of their bladder. The bladder is 2 muscles snapped together. Like if you took 2 cellophane bags and put them together, there's a space between it. And that space, oftentimes, based on our health, based on the toxicity, the molds, the heavy metals, the drugs that we've taken, various other kind of infections that we might have had, you get a chronic low-grade infection between the 2 walls of the muscle of the bladder, and it's almost impossible to get to unless you have the right techniques, but it's missed. You have chronic urinary problems. You know, you have to get up and go to the bathroom a lot, and a lot of time it's this chronic infection that nobody knows to look for. First, you have to know to look for it. If you don't know to look for it, you're in trouble. So just to kind of recap the show today, I just started talking and I just haven't stopped, except for we listened to Jason Fung, because I'm so passionate about what we can do to help people now. We know that we can lengthen those telomeres in the DNA. We know that we can actually turn back the hands of time, the clock, your biological clock, but you better do it before it's too late. I had a 91-year-old gentleman attend 2 or 3 of my classes last year, and he spoke at my class this last Wednesday at Severino's, and he said, he's for 91, he looks great. He was really reluctant at first to start the class, but his blood sugar is down dramatically. I believe it's below 100. His cholesterol's down, and he's lost like 20 pounds. He looks like he's 70. He was more inflamed when we started this. And by the way, we're starting the class this Wednesday, McCollum Family Chiropractic, 7 o'clock. You can still come. It's a 7-week course on the diet variation, intermittent fasting, ketogenic diet done correctly. And we're going to teach you diet variation, which is missed by most people. You can't, when you do diets that count calories and you reduce your caloric intake, and you think that that's going to work for you, it might work for a little while, but then your whole body thinks it's starving, so it shuts down its metabolism pretty soon. So instead of operating at 2,000 calories a day, and then all of a sudden you get down to 1,200, it thinks I've got to slow down my metabolism. So it slows its metabolism down to 1,200, and then you're just not going to lose any more weight. You're stuck there. So. And then you give up on the diet and go, oh, the heck with it, I'm going to go back to eat my hot fudge sundaes. Your caloric intake goes up, and guess what? You put on more weight. So if you've ever had that experience where you started a diet, you lost some weight, you gave up the diet, and you gained back what you lost plus more, it's because the concept of diet variation is not understood. And very few people do. You're not going to hear this stuff all put together in one place unless I would highly recommend that you tune into my class. You can go to mccollumwellness.com and you can sign up online and do the whole 7-week class online no matter where you are in the country. You can also, by doing that, you will have a Zoom meeting, or you'll have a meeting that you can attend and watch online my Wednesday night class, so you can see the whole long presentation. And you will also be privy to get on a Zoom meeting where it's a question and answer meeting once a week. So any trouble you're having, you'll be able to get that answered. Now, the online course, it's called The Cellular Healing Lifestyle. It's based on Dr. Dan Pompa's book, Beyond Fasting. But the whole thing, it's like a 3 to 5 minute video. Then you download your worksheets. You download all of the things that you're supposed to do for the week. And then you answer a few questions at the end of every week. You can't skip ahead. You have to do 1 week. It won't let you do the next one till a week's up, because everybody wants to go to the end of the book and see who done it. And it won't work that way. You can't do a 5-day water fast if you've never skipped a meal before. So it's designed that way. And a lot of times people aren't ready for the 5-day water fast at the end of the 7 weeks. And that's fine, because once you enroll in this class, you're in it forever. All of the updated information that comes out. We didn't really talk about senescent cells last year. It was not a huge piece of information. Now we know that these senile cells, these senescent cells, are causing chronic inflammation. We got to get rid of them. We know that the lymphatic system there's 4 times as much lymph fluid in our body as there is blood circulating in our body. This lymphatic system helps deliver fats to our cells, but it also helps, it's like the sewage system, it helps drain our body out. So we've got to learn how to help our lymph system work better. If you have a clogged lymph system, you're gonna be sick. It causes all kinds of issues. You've heard of lymphedema, lymph system edema, swelling of the lymph system. So more and more, as we take a look at the health centers of the future, which I'm lucky enough to be one of about 30 to 40 doctors in the whole country that are part of health centers of the future, and working with Dr. Dan Pompa and some of the other incredible scientists, you really have a chance to potentially turn back your biological clock. I did have my telomeres tested, those little things that you can actually get your telomeres tested. It will tell you what your biological age is versus your age by how many times the Earth spins around the sun. So I've been on this planet 64 years as the Earth spins around the sun. My telomere age is only 42. So my real biological age is 42, but my earthly age is 64. Bizarre. Is that good or bad? Well, it's good that my body's young, but if I don't take care of it and I don't make sure I don't get these age-related diseases, I'm going to be one of those guys walking around not knowing who I am in a wheelchair with all these different medications that I'd be on because I haven't taken care of my body. Nobody's taught me how to take care of it. Now we know how to take care of it, and I'll show you how to do it. So, Dr. Duncan McCollum, thanks for listening. If you want to come to our workshop, it's on Clare Street by Bed Bath & Beyond in Capitola, McCollum Family Chiropractic.